attempting to talk to you about the Cape Storm and what happened and why there's so much drama about it. Well, what happened was actually it was 2 in 1. We had on the one side we had storm surges, we had high seas moving into the interior, causing it dry, it was very, very wet weather in Cape Town. While in places just 500 kilometers away, we've got fire. We had fire due to in Knysna, due to those strong winds that were in those areas. And then I'll also talk to you about the aftermath that happened in those areas. And before I start, so officially, just like to say that condolences to everyone that lost their lives and everyone that lost anything due to those fires and this natural disaster. But before I start, let's look at what happened the day before. This is a synoptic chart of the weather that preceded the storms that happened. This is a cold front. As you can see, this one was on the 6th, just at midnight, before this Cape Storm started. This is this cold front developing over the ocean, now about to move into Cape Town. As you can see, this is midnight on the 6th of June. This is on the 7th of June. As you can see, strong winds. Cape Town is reaching about 20 knots, which is 40 kilometers per hour already in those areas. And the places just to the north, we're having all those very, very, very strong winds. And even in places like Knysna, we're already reporting very strong. As you can see here, this is a 10 knot wind. In kilometers, that's about 20 kilometers per hour. In places like PE, we're seeing 40 kilometer per hour winds. And just a summary of those winds. This is the Cape Town Observatory, which is showing us the wind. So the blue line, which is the first line, is actually showing us the first one, which is the wind speed, which is what actually happened. As you can see, it started off on the 6th with normal winds at about 40 kilometers per hour, and then it started peaking around about midday at about 10 o'clock, reaching about 60 kilometers per hour. And as you can see, it dropped down overnight, which is what we normally expect. But then the next day, which is this red line, and wind started even stronger, started at 50 kilometers per hour and then even strengthened to very high. This is actually the red line, sorry, but the red line is the wind gust, showing us at the same time that the wind was at 50 kilometers per hour, the gust was actually at 80 kilometers per hour. It's the same thing throughout this 2-day period where when we have very strong winds, as you can see here, the winds, it's about 50 kilometers per hour. The gust is at about 90 kilometers per hour. That's very, very strong winds. This is already in Cape Town at 10 Zulu, which is about 12 o'clock, and this is for the 7th of June, around about midday for Cape Town. And as you can see, even the next day, it's continued even stronger. This is the one thing that led to these fires to be very, very strong. That's the first thing, the wind. Otherwise, the storm was a normal storm. It was a cold front, but the main thing that made it to be devastating was the first thing, which was the winds, which are very strong. Now, before we move on to what happened, I'm just going to show you a little video which shows us storm surges, what happened with the storm surge. The first video is showing us that before a storm surge occurs, before it comes through, as you can see in those images, the water, as it rains over the ocean, the water gets pushed into the land, and sometimes the barriers that we have might even be broken. As you can see on the sides there, those trees are about to be destroyed due to the water that is actually moving into the land. It's not really about the rainfall. This is the same thing that's showing us the storm surge. As you can see, the water is moving into the land, being pushed from the rainfall as it rains over the ocean. Even though it's not raining over land, you will see that it is very strong. Some people were starting to say that we're not seeing any rainfall in Cape Town, but why did we close schools? Why did we evacuate homes? But as you can see, the storm was developing over the ocean, and it moved into the land. As you can see, this is where the storm develops over the ocean, and then it pushes water into the interior, and that's a storm surge, and that's why we had all those wave heights reaching about 8 meters in height and spreading all along the south coast and affecting all these areas along the south coast, Langaban, into places along all those areas in the south coast. But then 500 kilometers away, we've got Knysna. Knysna is something completely different. It's not having the storm surge, as we're not having that onshore flow. We're not having those strong winds that's pushing the wind from that's pushing the water from the ocean into the interior. In Knysna, we had these very strong winds that were coming in from the interior northwesterly towards the coastal areas. Now, these winds over the interior, they're warm. You might find that the wind speed was at about 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. That's the average wind speed, with a gust of about 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. Now, what happened in Knysna, this was the first, I think, As you can see on the winds, the gray one is showing us, actually we're going to start with the blue line. The blue line, which is the first one, is showing us the first day, that's the 6th of June, before actually it started happening. And as you can see, the winds are normally at about 15 kilometers per hour, ranging between 15 and 0. And the next day, that's where we're starting to see this orange line. That's the next day, where the wind started at 5 kilometers per hour, then jumped up to about 25 kilometers per hour later on in the day, around about midday, 12, 1 o'clock, and then it was pumping at about 40 kilometers per hour. Now, this is Knysna. Knysna already, we've got these winds pumping at 40 kilometers per hour, with gusts reaching about 90 kilometers an hour and above. Then later on, it moved to even stronger strength. The next day, which was the 8th of June in the morning, we still had these winds, which were at about 25 kilometers per hour, peaked at 40 kilometers per hour around about 3, 4 o'clock. And then later on, they started going down. As you can see, on the 8th of June, the winds are at about at 1800 Zulu. The winds are very, very light, at about 20 or even less. These are the affected areas. In the Knysna area, as you can see, this is where Knysna is. All these areas that you can see here along the N2, that's where the fires in some areas jumped from the one side of the N2 to the other side. This is Knysna at the center, started of course in the eastern part and then moved towards the western part, and as you can see in those areas. Now my second video I'm going to show you, will be showing us what happened. If I can just get that video to play with this after this aftermath. But before this aftermath, this was the Cape Town storms. This is on the other side, we have these high waves. All of this is happening at the same time. On the one side, we've got these high seas with waves reaching about 8 meters in height. And then on the other side, the same time, we've got these strong fires which are reaching which are making a lot of devastation. Now, this is why this was so important. We've got the same system, but causing two completely different things. On the one side, we've got wave heights. On the other side, we've got these strong fires. And coming back to the areas that were affected, we've had more than 6, 7 people that lost their lives due to this. And once again, condolences to those. And even infrastructure damage, with more than 150 people evacuated from their homes. We had about 500 to 800 firefighters and even more in the areas that were affected, that were working with these people, helping them and trying to kill the fires. And very big ups to them. I would like to thank all those people who worked in these areas: Sagefield, Knysna, Plettenberg Bay. And it's not only the Knysna area. Strong winds uprooted trees in between these two cities, between Cape Town and Knysna. We've got trees uprooted. We had infrastructure that was destroyed due to these very, very, very strong winds. And in light of everything that's happened, due to the weather that we're having these days, it might be strong and we might see all these occurrences coming even more and more often. It is very wise to listen to the weather details that will be coming, that will be showing, mainly because we can forecast wind, we can forecast the temperature, we can forecast these things, but you can't really forecast fire. But when we forecast the conditions that permit for fire to be spread very easily, which is what happened actually in this case, we might ask that you do listen very carefully. Now, the last image is I'm just going to show you some of the damage that occurred. The last one, I'm just going to show you the last video that I have in there is actually for the damage and the aftermath that happened. As you can see, those fires burning through the Knysna area, through all the way through towards Plettenberg Bay, causing a lot of damage. We're seeing these fires causing traffic in places even outside of Knysna, very close to where the people are living. It's not only about the fire that burns property, it's also about the living conditions in those areas. We're talking about air quality. We're always talking about pollution here in Waterwise. And this is just one case where it was at a very, very exacerbated effect, at very, very high amounts. With all that said, remember, we had the storm, we forecasted it a couple of days before it actually happened. So next time we do have something like this, which probably I'm hoping not in the next 30 years, which this one was the strongest one in the last 30 years. Hoping not to have another one like this. But if we do see something like this, we will warn and we will give out warnings in time. So all you have to do is evacuate and follow whatever the joint operation protocols are actually asking you. If it's SANDF that's asking you to move out of your house, it's not because they want to take something, but it's because they actually want to help you. And once again, condolences to the families that lost lost properties and their lives. So I will leave it here for today. That's it from Waterwise. Remember to stay tuned next week, same time, same place.